Hi, good morning. This is Gayatri Jayaraman. Welcome to Shamaha. I hope you've had a lovely weekend. We're entering into the last week of the year, the last 10 days. And we all have resolutions that we hope to keep in the next year. One of mine is definitely fitness. I'll be learning Ashtanga Yoga through a teacher in Mysore from the Mysore school. So I'm very excited about that. I hope that all of you also have very interesting resolutions. Do leave comments, questions, and suggestions. It would be very interesting to share those resolutions, and maybe others can also be inspired. When we get into this space of things that we want to achieve, or things that we wish we could achieve, we immediately think about the obstacles that we face in achieving them. If this works out for me, I will be able to do this. If that works out for me, I'll be able to do this. It can be ranging from finances to, permissions, to eligibility, to ability to travel, health, so many things. For instance, as I'm taking up yoga, I'm thinking, I hope, I am overweight. I hope my physical stamina is going to allow me to keep up with the teacher who's very experienced and very knowledgeable. So we all have these fears and insecurities about what we want to achieve and what is going to get in our way in order for us to be able to achieve them. I was over this weekend, I've been contemplating something that my teacher said in class on Saturday, Miss Asha Pillai-Balsara of the WCCLF Foundation in Pune. And we were discussing something else entirely. And in that context, she said, tolerance is a power, right? And if you think about it, as I have over the weekend, tolerance essentially becomes a superpower. Okay, it becomes our ability, our skill, our essential innate expandability. And we tend to think of it as something that people have or they don't have. You're tolerant, you're intolerant, it's your cultural background, it's your upbringing. You are from this religion, therefore you are not tolerant. I am from this religion, therefore I am tolerant. But what is tolerance to us personally in our lives on a daily basis? And I've been contemplating it. And why is it a superpower? I've been contemplating it, and I've come up with 4 or 5 ways in which we are all either tolerant or intolerant that I wanted to share with you. So today we'll be discussing tolerance is a superpower. Okay. And I know the most common space in which we all say this is on social media, and we say, I don't know how to tolerate the stupidity. I don't know how to tolerate this ignorance. And the first area is the tolerance of ideas. A lot of us get very upset or very angry when we see other people act in ways that, we can see that their ideas are stupid. Their ideas come from ignorance. Their ideas are intolerant. Their ideas are not suitable for a lot of humanity. And we think, where have they come from? They're so uncultured. They're so uneducated. They have no refinement in thinking. I just cannot tolerate their nonsense. And there is also the opposite aspect of, should we tolerate intolerant behavior? Because how is that tolerance in itself? But here's the thing, when you begin to think of tolerance as a superpower, of tolerance as power in itself, the person who has tolerance, when we begin to think of tolerance as a power, then we begin to see that the person who has tolerance is far more powerful, is in a stronger position than the person who doesn't. Whether that tolerance is for stupidity, whether that tolerance is for ignorance, whether that tolerance is for bad behavior. Now, the first thing that's going to come up is saying, why should I tolerate bad behavior? Why should I tolerate ignorance? Why should I tolerate stupidity? Please understand that tolerance doesn't mean we don't do anything about it. Those of us who know have an obligation to spread knowledge. Those of us who have read have an obligation to pass on that reading. Because knowledge, just like money and abundance and all the other things that we've discussed earlier, is an energy. And the more you try and hoard it up for yourself, the less it's going to come to you. So the way to deal with energy is always to pass it on. So those of us who have knowledge, who know better, who see better, are obligated to pass it on. And the simplest way to understand this is as parents to children, right? When children don't know, as they don't know so many things, they're just beginning to explore the world for the first time. There are some very basic things that they don't understand. Like, for instance, I remember the first time my son burst out crying when he met another person called Gayatri, because he thought there would only be one person called Gayatri, and that was his mother. And he was very startled that there was somebody else who was trying to take my name. And so he burst out crying. He must have been 2 years old. And at that point, we see their ignorance. Okay, it's very easy to call it stupidity, but we're able to communicate to them the knowledge that we have about diversity, about multiplicity, about possessiveness, about how other people also exist within our framework. And this is part of the process of expanding a child's knowledge basis, right? The thing is, we don't do this as adults to other people because we think they should have learned by now, they should have known better by now, and it is not my job to teach them. What is the difference between the two? The difference between the two is the simple element of compassion. When you have compassion for another's, when you have compassion for another's ignorance, where you have a compassion for another's stupidity, where you have compassion for another's intolerance, it puts you in a better position to give them the knowledge that you already have and help them expand their horizons. And you can never give knowledge, you can never pass on that energy with anger, with your own intolerance, with your own sort of obstacles standing in the way, because then it will never reach them. Try teaching a child by shouting at them. They will simply not learn. They will shut down. They will start crying, sobbing. Their mind will go somewhere else. You will have to give them a break, and you will have to come back at it at a point where both of you are much calmer and you're able to communicate that lesson more effectively. As they say, if your point is not getting across, don't raise your volume, raise your argument. And the ability to raise that argument comes from a space of compassion. Without compassion, your tolerance or your intolerance is no different from theirs. Theirs is for their point of view that they think is true. Yours is for your point of view that you think is true. So there is literally no difference between you and them. So this ability to tolerate another's idea, no matter where it is coming from, and let's be fair, if we are fair and equitable individuals, we come from a place where we see there might be something to what they're saying that I haven't understood. So knowledge is energy, and it has to operate on this basis of give and take, of comprehension, of listening, of empathy, of understanding context, seeing where people come from, and also seeing if there's something I can learn from that process. And only then will the knowledge that I want to impart to people actually reach them. This is how tolerance becomes a power in the hands of somebody who knows how to wield it. The first is tolerance for ideas. The second is tolerance for emotions. A lot of the time, we are overwhelmed by our emotions, whether it is anger, whether it is a sense of disappointment, whether it is irritation, whether it is betrayal, whether, it is our own sorrow, our own grief at things that have been done to us. And we hold these against people, and we feel extremely burdened by these emotions. When we begin to look at the power of tolerance as something that is valuable, that is essential, we are able to look at our emotions and say, if I was powerful and not weak in front of them, if I was not burdened by them, how would I handle these same emotions? What is the way in which I would approach them? When we begin to approach emotions from a space of power, we are the ones who are in control. When we are the ones who are in control, we are able to manipulate and calibrate them. We are able to show them where it is necessary. Sometimes it is necessary to show anger. It is necessary to show irritation to get certain work done. It is necessary to set down boundaries, to be firm. But there's no need to be aggressive. We can be assertive. There is necessary to express disappointment. I believed in you and you did not live up to that belief. I'm very disappointed in you. But when we are able to put these messages across, when we look at tolerance as a power, we're able to sit with these emotions. We're able to sit with this anger, this disappointment, and observe what that emotion does to us. And when we are able to observe what that emotion does to us, we're able to say, what does this emotion mean to me? Where has it come from? What is it indicating? What am I disappointed in? What is my anger for? What is the outcome that I would like to see happen? And then instead of reacting to the emotion, we're able to respond. We're able to produce a solution that allows us to maybe get what we want. That tells that person exactly what was expected of them. Maybe we've given them a test. Maybe we've left a child alone at home and we've come back and found the house completely messed up. And we say, I'm disappointed in you. But the child probably hasn't understood what was expected of him. So at that point, when we look at our emotion, instead of offering the emotion, we're able to go to the root of the emotion and offer the expectation. That allows the other person also to respond not to the emotion, because the response to an emotion will be an emotion, but allow them to respond to an expectation with a behavior or an intention. This is the way in which, when we use tolerance as a power, we are able to tolerate our emotions much more. When we are able to tolerate our emotions much more, we go to the root of them. And when we go to the root of them, we're able to find a way in which to deploy them to our advantage. This brings us to a third aspect, which is tolerance of behavior. It becomes very difficult sometimes to tolerate other people's behavior. Sometimes it becomes difficult to tolerate our own. I want to go on a diet. I want to lose weight. I know what I should eat, what I shouldn't eat. I've been to the gym. I've been to a nutritionist. I've had the diet plan. I know everything about keto, paleo, everything, intermittent fasting, but I'm just not able to stick to it. It's becoming really intolerant to sit with my own actions because I don't want to. So why am I doing them? It becomes difficult to tolerate the tantrums that other people throw, the emotional blackmail, the manipulation. Right? It becomes very, very difficult for us to sit with these kind of behaviors that other people offer to us. When I shift my perspective of tolerance to a power, how does my deployment of it change? When tolerance is a power that we wield, we look at our behaviors. We're able to tolerate the provocations of those behaviors. There is lovely food that is being cooked or that's available. There's a Zomato offer of like 50% off on pizza. And I've decided I'm on an intermittent fast today, but what can I do? It's such a great offer. I must take it. When we begin to wield tolerance as a power, it becomes a test. It becomes a test of strength. We look at it and we say, do I have the power to withstand this provocation? When people come at us with behaviors that are meant to provoke our anger, disappointment, sorrow, a response that is angry, we sit with it. A threat. Do this or I'm going to do that. We gain the ability to sit with it. To be unfazed. To not be shaken off a path that we have decided already to take. And what happens when you are unfazed in your behavior? When you cannot be shaken off your path? The person who's coming at you to shake you off the path is not getting the reaction that they want. When they're not able to get the reaction of what they want, they have to change their tactic because the tactic that they are using is not working. If they come at you to make you angry, words, insults, say trolls on social media, calling you all kinds of names, the minute you start reacting to them, they're happy. See, I told you, this is how they're going to behave. She is that kind of a person. She talks about all these things, but look at her on social media. She's also giving galis like me. How is she different? You've given them exactly what they wanted. When somebody comes at you with a threat, do this or I will do that. A threat is a test. Are you going to do what I want you to do? Is this your threshold of power and limits? When I cross this line, are you going to obey to me? They're pushing, they're pushing, they're pushing. And you only succumb to that when you don't know your limits, when you don't know your boundaries, when you don't know how to hand out consequences, right? When you're sure of yourself, those things become much easier. I'm not going to limit my screen time. What are you going to do? Do you know what you're going to do? And that is a question that's constantly put to us by people within our framework, our social frameworks, whether it's family, neighborhood, society. Know what you're going to do. When you begin to wield tolerance as a power, you know exactly what you're going to do. If you levy this threat on me, I know the consequences. I know beyond which I will not be pushed. I know when I will turn away. I will know what actions I will take after that. And for that, you need clarity. You need clarity of your emotions. You need clarity of your ideas. You need clarity of what happened, what didn't happen. You need clarity of right and wrong. You need clarity of your own patience, your own compassion. Sometimes compassion is also tough love. It is making somebody do what they do not want to do. So when we begin to wield tolerance as a power, our ability to tolerate our own behaviors as well as the behaviors of another increases. When it increases, you're able to see cause, condition, effect. You're able to see consequences and rewards. You're able to therefore choose paths. And you're therefore able not to be swayed. This is how to use tolerance for behavior in your daily life. The fourth aspect is to use tolerance for opposition. Sometimes there are things that we want to do and there are people or objects or events that get in our way. So say I want to go and study this particular course, but my finances have been diverted into something else, which is also essential. Maybe there's a hospitalization, there's a medical incident, and it's not optional, right? So the money that I had been saving for this has gone into that. It's not within my control. Technically it is, it's a choice I can make, but very few of us could make that choice to say, I would not go into this medical surgery, I'm going to put it into something that's going to be, say, a degree. And there is the sense of disappointment. What is our tolerance for opposition? Sometimes there are people who don't want us to get a particular promotion, a position, a kind of beat, a kind of portfolio. People who are constantly putting obstacles in our way. What is the way in which this begins to change for us when we begin to wield tolerance as a power? The tolerance to an obstacle is an immense and vast and expansive patience. I'm here, my goal is there, there's a mountain in between. My ability to tolerate that mountain is my power. It can also be my stupidity, because the more I tolerate the mountain is not going to move. The mountain doesn't have legs. It's not going to shrink. A meteor is not going to hit it. And magically my way is not going to be clear. But what then does the purpose of tolerance of an obstacle serve? The more you observe an obstacle, the more you will begin to find your way around it. You will see whether there are other paths. You will understand whether that mountain can be scaled. You can see if there is another direction you need to head in. You will see if there is a detour you should have taken maybe previously, and your ability to retrace your steps will increase. You will even begin to contemplate whether that goal is the only goal. Is there another goal I can go to? The more you're able to stay, to sit with an obstacle, to contemplate it, the more your resentment against it goes down. The push and pull decreases. You will sit with it to observe the obstacle, to observe your relationship to the obstacle, to observe the anxiety, the angst, the push and pull, the friction, the dynamic, the relationship. And the more you sit with an observational mind, the more your understanding of that obstacle increases. And the more your understanding of that obstacle increases, the more you realize this is a game. There are various aspects you might need to apply. One might simply be patience. Maybe if you sit there long enough, a meteor is going to hit the mountain. For that, you have to have an understanding of the planetary layout, maybe astronomy, maybe comets and meteors whizzing through the sky. Maybe expanding your knowledge will help you realize that this obstacle is not going to be an obstacle for much longer. Maybe in the time that you're sitting there tolerating that obstacle, you will be able to study, gain additional knowledge that will help you navigate it, or at least decrease your anxiety over it. Maybe you will befriend the obstacle. Maybe you will find a path around it. Maybe the more detailed you observe, you'll notice that there's a small path that goes through it. It's a narrow path. You would have missed it when you were in that frantic state of what do I do, what do I do, what do I do? The obstacle, as I've said many times before, requires a conversation. It requires a dialogue. It's there for a reason. And that reason is to open up a certain insight inside of you. And this is what happens when we begin to wield tolerance as a power for an obstacle. We're able to sit with the obstacle and we gain insight both about the nature of the obstacle as well as our own nature. And we find solutions come either from our observation of it or from our observation of ourselves. These are the 4 ways in which we can wield tolerance as a power. The 5th way is the spiritual dimension. Tolerance in the spiritual dimension becomes an immense power. It's our ability to tolerate our own thoughts, our own ideas, our own emotions, our own bodies, which begin to pose an obstacle towards us. We realize the relationship of resistance that we have developed through something that we live in day in and day out. These limbs, they won't fold, they won't sit there, they will ache, they will scream, they will groan, they will reveal hidden pains to us. Our muscles, our nerves, our hunger, our thirst. When we are able to develop tolerance as a power for these previous 4, our ideas, our emotions, our behaviors, our obstacles, then we can turn them and begin to apply them to our observation of the self. And in the spiritual dimension, tolerance as a power allows us to explore deeper and deeper, to know ourselves more and more. It opens up dimensions of ourselves that we have not known. It opens up equanimity. It opens up compassion. It opens up connection. It opens up this understanding of the world as intertwined, as interdependent. We see cause, condition, and effect. And therefore, tolerance also gives us insight. It gives us perception. When it gives us insight and perception, we are able to align. We're able to align our mind, our spirit, along with our body through exercise, through physical activity, through meditation, through insight, through therapy. Through studying our own minds and our thoughts and our emotions, our behaviors, we're able to come to a state of alignment. When we come to a state of alignment within ourselves, we find that energetically what is within us comes to harmony with what is outside us. There are 2 ways to do this. The first and most essential way is compassion. You cannot come to tolerance as a power without compassion. Compassion for yourself, for your insight, for your understanding. You're wanting it to grow, for you're wanting it to understand. That cannot come from arrogance. You can't believe that you already know everything that there is to know in the world. Any fair-minded individual knows that there is something I don't know. And therefore, when we look at others, their ideas, their emotions, their behavior, we're able to look at them and say, what about this do I not know? What am I missing? What do I need to learn? And that only comes from compassion. If you actually genuinely want to know where the other person comes from and what they have to teach you, that is compassion for yourself, because then you're invested in your own growth. And the second is exposure. The more you're exposed to people, the more you're connected, the more you will find that there are things to learn. That there is more by which you can grow. You can learn from a dog, you can learn from a crow that comes to your window every day. You can learn from trees, you can learn from the way that plants in pots grow. You can learn from people, from their experiences, their way of processing their lives, their emotions, their ideas, their behaviors. You can learn from others' intolerance. The more we increase our exposure, by which I mean we increase our tolerance to the things that we do not understand, the more we begin to understand. And that adds to the compassion for ourselves as well as for others. So I hope this is really useful to you, especially in this week as we close the year. Look around you at the things that you feel extremely intolerant of the people, the ideas, the emotions, the behaviors, your own spiritual aspects. And look at them and say, what do I need to do to bring all this into alignment? Can increasing my tolerance just a little bit? Can I increase my exposure? Can I increase my compassion? And can I gain knowledge? Can I gain insight? And can I gain perspective? I hope this really helps you this week. Let me know the ways in which it might transform people that you're dealing with or situations that you're dealing with. Do email me. You'll find the email in the description box below. And do also leave questions, comments, and suggestions. Always glad to hear from you. I'll see you.